Whenever an event occurs that has the potential to get everyone back on the same page inside the false reality, there are things to think about rather than simply trying to parse the details of what might turn out to be a complete and total fiction. And I'm talking about any event that is designed in a narrative sense to get everyone back on the same page. It could be a quote-unquote natural disaster or a quote-unquote cyber attack or a quote-unquote market crash. At some point, you got to start wondering if all of these massive disasters are just caused by the same people. And once you start thinking that, you find out, oh yeah, they totally are. But anything like that, or a debate, or an election, or the kidnapping of a white girl in college, or OJ driving down the freeway. It's fine and appropriate to look over things so you have an idea of what's going on, but you don't want to get bogged down in parsing all of the details. It's important to process the information with the same epistemology, using the same discernment and the same skepticism that you'd apply to anything else. And it's too often the case that with these major events that trigger people's emotions, they leave all that aside, especially if the narrative seems to favor their side. They'll invest in all the details so they can prove over and over again, to whatever degree necessary, that everyone else is the bad guy. It's motivated thinking triggered by an emotional reaction. That's a bad road to go down intellectually. It's going to lead to a lot of bad consequences and bad outcomes in one's thinking. And even just from a practical standpoint, it doesn't make sense to obsess over all the details of an undeveloped story when you can't retrieve those details yourself. It's not as if you memorize all the news, then you can map it appropriately. Somewhere down at the bottom of that, there's going to be a correct answer that maps faithfully onto reality prime, onto any picture of the real world. If the event itself is fake, or it's not faithfully reported, or if all the reporting attempts to skew the meaning of the key facts, then what you have is some sort of fiction. I've talked about this many times. I talk about how people waste all their time pursuing the granular details of a complete and total fiction. It would be like knowing absolutely everything about Game of Thrones. You might make yourself an expert in the details of Game of Thrones, but that doesn't make Game of Thrones real. So rather than just jumping in, assuming that the stories are true or mostly true, or even attempting to be true, and then trying somehow to coherently navigate your way to a full and complete picture of what actually happened, there are some other things to think about that might help to better frame the issue. And so I listed a few of them. Number one, who is out front delivering the official story? In regard to discernment and skepticism, I wrote, if we know the details are murky at best, the story should be rejected in its entirety. If the case cannot be made with direct, irrefutable evidence, not videos or documents, the case is not made. Videos and documents are fine as information among other information. They are not in themselves compelling arguments. We have videos purported to be of Thomas Matthew Crooks, but there's no way of verifying that. And his body was disposed of. The guy had no social media history, and his parents didn't even seem to know who he was. We're forced to accept some grainy video and some strange-looking pictures and the word of people who should never be trusted about anything. What direct evidence do we have of anything concerning Trump assassination event number 2? Well, there's certainly no direct evidence. There are murky details about stories that shift and change and don't really make sense when it comes to what happened at Mar-a-Lago. And then there's some video of Ralph being stopped and arrested that MSNBC is playing. And again, to be clear, I'm not saying it's not possible that any of that stuff is real. I'm not saying it's possible that this event didn't happen. I'm just saying that all of these details are murky at best. And until we have a much clearer picture, no one should be deciding anything about what should be done. But that's not how our culture operates, and that's certainly not how our media operates. It's like a contest for people to describe exactly how to handle this situation. Oh, Trump needs to hunker down at Mar-a-Lago for 2 months. Ron DeSantis needs to investigate. This is all Ukraine's fault. We should go to war with Iran. Trump needs to tone down his rhetoric. Are any of those things justified based on a set of murky details, none of which can be confirmed? Imagine making an important decision in your own personal life on a set of totally murky, unconfirmed details. Like, imagine I said to you, hey, do you want a new job? What would you say? You wouldn't say yes. And unless you really loved your current job, you probably wouldn't say no either. You would say, what's the job? And then you would keep asking questions until you had enough details that you were able to make a good, responsible, informed decision. But that's not what you're being encouraged to do. You're being encouraged to form beliefs and take actions on virtually no verifiable information whatsoever. The only calculus is we like Trump. They say something bad happened to Trump. In response, we need to do XYZ. That's not even a serious way to approach things. Let's continue. Anyone recommending you perform a certain behavior or think a certain thing is overtly attempting to exploit you and should be regarded with contempt. One of the major things to understand about this entire process is that we have been exploited throughout our lives, in great part due to this information operation and the way that these sorts of stories are used to direct belief and behavior. Understanding that that is the enemy's primary tactic, everything they recommend should be rejected out of hand until you have enough information to reach a conclusion on your own. And if that happens to coincide with what they recommend, fine. But we imagine ourselves as less informed than the people who are informing us, as if they've gone out and vetted this information. They've found it on their own. They would stand behind it. These people don't stand behind anything. I wrote, anyone pandering for follows on X, formerly Twitter, and other legacy apps with quote unquote breaking or any of that other nonsense should be mocked. They should. Influencers are not breaking news. They're seeing something online and then they are publicizing what they saw. It's clickbait almost every time, and very rarely are they actually breaking news. So it's also dishonest. The point is that we must break the ability of the machine to control us, of the media to control us. It is okay to wait for more details. It's okay to be skeptical. It's okay to understand that there is nothing they won't lie about. There is nothing they won't fake. It is also important to realize that Donald Trump is engaged in a high-level chess match in an information war for all the marbles. Him going along with one side of a narrative temporarily does not make that narrative true.
In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.